What's up, YouTubers? Today we're going to talk about the Hinderer knives, Project X. Project X unicorn. No, it's not a unicorn. They will come out eventually in time. We just got to give them time, I guess. It's all part of stuff not being available in the world. This knife has a 3.62-inch blade of S45 VN steel. I guess that's considered in the super steels. Certainly in the stainless side of things. It weighed 6.4 ounces and it prices at $500. Which is a little bit above your typical Hinderers, which are normally in the $425 range. Part of that, I do believe, in fact, I'm fairly certain, is due to the fact that you actually have the takedown tool here that comes with it. Kind of nice. I will go ahead and link at the end of this, or go ahead and tack on at the end of this one, the disassembly. I was originally going to do it on the front side, but you're already going to be bored enough. So we'll just put that on the back side for anybody who does want to see disassembly. It worked great with this thing, and I will say out of the get-go, if you don't get that far, it's kind of cool the fact that they went ahead and made that a working finish to match the blade. You know, this is in fact a battle bronze one, which basically means it's going to come with a working finish blade. So you know what? I'll get that out of the way. That's just kind of jumping in front of one of the good things. But yeah, this knife is quite hindery. And in fact, let's go ahead and, well, let me first give you some comparisons, alternatives of knives that you can actually buy. You know, there's some other ones like an 80-20 I think would be acceptable alternatives. You just can't get those. So ones that you can actually get is, I think, the Spartan Harsey full-size folder. That one's also S45 yen, and that one goes, this one was the, you know, one of their kind of fancied up ones, and that one went for exactly $500. So kind of similar, you know, full titanium in the hand. I think the Chris Reeve knives, this is the Nkosi, but you could also get the large Sebenza. Again, this is definitely a different in terms of, this is a little bit more refined, has a hollow ground, is a better slicer, you know, has a few other things going for it, but again, for just the base one, you can get that for $500 too. So that's kind of the range that I think you're looking at for kind of some of these tougher knives. You know, and certainly both of those run on washers, and the Hinderer knives, this one runs with the tri-way. So you can see the tri-way, which this one comes with ball bearings in it, but it does come with both Teflon as well as phosphor bronze washers. We're going to get to that in a little bit. In terms of the construction, this is gonna be quite a deconstruction, so to speak, because this is one of those things where, you know, I won't say done in silence, or hidden, but it's just one of those that it wasn't a whole lot until it kind of came out, and then I was like, oh, Project X, okay, here it is upon you. There wasn't a whole lot leaked and so forth, but I'm going to go ahead and deconstruct it in terms of some of the things for the Hinderer fans, and you're going to know where some of the stuff, I think, basically gets some of its cues from. So first of all, let's start on the blade. On the blade, there's not a full-size finger choil, even a larger choil, and I think, for my money, that cue comes from the Eclipse. The Eclipse standard models, yes, they have no choil, special editions or whatever, the XM18 and that sort of thing, but the Eclipse's standard don't come with a finger choil, so that's one of the things that I think you're getting out of the gate there. And actually, that ends up working well, because you get a little bit closer to the blade without having to go into some of those dicier areas, like on the XM18. We'll go ahead and demonstrate that. If you really want to choke up, you end up into a little bit of a risk zone there with those. So I kind of, actually, on the whole, I think that's a good thing. As far as the flipper goes, I'm going to leave the XM18, or the Eclipse out here, because it is less offensive than the XM18 models, and it doesn't have the squared off ones, kind of like the some of the, like the half tracks and that sort of thing. So I would say the actual cue for the flipper is much better than the XM18 if you're used to those. Those are kind of pokey and in your hands, and I think, like I said, the Eclipse definitely gets the nod as far as that cue goes. This has nice crown jimping on the back of the blade here, so it's not like really super aggressive. It's workable, but it has a kind of a nice rounded radius there, and that's nice. It has a good crowning, and I think I've seen that, you know, the closest I've seen that on is on the half tracks, and you can kind of see how that has that nice rounding on there. So they took kind of the good cues from that, and that's a good thing. As far as that front finger groove, this one's actually kind of funny. The front finger groove is exactly from the XM18. I mean, you can put those on top of each other, and you just see that finger groove fit perfectly there. So that's a good thing, because that's really kind of some of the start of your ergonomics with, you know, Hinderer models is really that front finger groove kind of locks you in up next to the integral front guard. There is what you get. So that's definitely gets that. The concave backing, if you kind of take a look at this backing, it has full concavity back here versus, for example, an XM18. Let's go ahead and look at that. You actually kind of have this swell, so it comes out. This one has it relies on concave backing, so that when your finger goes in there, or fingers go in there, you know, they kind of tuck in, and then you kind of have that back swell, which locks it into place. So it's not going to be sliding front or back. And that, I think, really, for my money, kind of comes from the MP1. The MP1, which is, I believe, essentially now a defunct one, is basically, other than the fact that it has this little extra nub in there, it's straight and it locks you in. So again, you see the lock in there, and that's what this knife brings to the table as far as that goes. You know, and then the bookend swell we talked about there. The Hinderer modular backspacer system, in this case, it's used, and what they do is they basically use a really large barrel spacer back there, and you can actually, you know, screw things in, or in this case, you can, with a little spring, you can kind of lock that tool, the disassembly tool, in there. But though it was originally introduced on the MP1, this particular model, so to speak, was actually discontinued. But the one that did continue on is on the Jurassic. So what it gives you the ability to do is to, with just a little screw, if you want to go ahead and utilize that, or a little, I forget what it is, maybe, is it 5/64, maybe 3/64? It's a very tiny little Allen wrench there, but you can actually take it off without having to disassemble the whole knife, and you can put like a glass breaker on the back here. You can put a lanyard hole. You'll notice there's no lanyard hole in there, and likewise on this knife, there is no lanyard hole. So you could do that as well, and it does go ahead and employ that HMBS. HMBS is Hinderer Modular Backspacer System. The takedown tool is, as far as I'm aware, it was only added on to the full track. I don't have a full track. That's another unicorn that's tough to get a hold of. In fact, I don't know. I think it's essentially discontinued. But so you're getting your cueing from there, and I really like that. And then last thing is it does use internal stop pins. You're going to notice there's no external pins out here, no thumb to be double used as thumb studs, and there's no internal stop, or there's no stop pins in the usual spots. However, the big difference between both the MP1 and the half track is that instead of having a channel cut into the frame, each side of the frame itself, and have the pin press fit into the blade, this one actually has a hole in the blade, and you'll see that if you watch the disassembly. And then it actually has a stop pin that goes across from here to there. You can kind of see that right there. And so that's an interesting thing. That's definitely something new I'd never seen in a Hinderer. I haven't also touched the Maximus before. And I think that's mostly the folders the only ones that I haven't touched. So that's the cueing that you're talking about. So if you're wondering, hey, what am I getting with this Hinderer? I think that gives you a really good idea, especially if you have seen and handled a lot of Hinderers. And I have, in this case. So let's jump into some of the pros of this that I found. The texturing on the lock side is great. There's no reason that it doesn't have it, I think, on the other ones. You might think, oh, it's going to be too aggressive for your pocket. No, it's not. You have the lock bar stabilizer there anyway that kind of provides a landing zone. Works just fine in and out of the pocket. No problems on that. So that's a great thing. The easy takedown tool, like I said, if you want to see how easy this thing is to take down, and it works really well with that takedown tool, that is a definite plus. Very few can you say that. I think the Ken Onion design, where he has the field strip system, that I can't think of a whole lot of others where you actually have that capability. The action on this, by the way, is just fine. It's very much like any other XM18. It behaves like that on the bearings. And then the back jimping. Thank God they solved this. If you take a look right at the end of the flipper there, the jimping ends. That was one of the absolute sins of the XM18, is you flipped open and you landed right on that jimping and it just tore you up. This one, no such problem. So thank you, Rick Hinderer. Personally, I actually appreciate that. That's one of the really good things. So the flipping action was all dialed in, and it's dialed in for bearings. Let's jump into the cons on this one, because for me, it's a really, really big con. No thumb studs. And really what I want to demonstrate now is the detent on this thing is definitely dialed in on for bearings and the flipper. It's unquestionable. It's tough to fail, even if you do it kind of slow. It's not really one you're going to want to push anyway, but you are going to do a light switch, and it's like I said, dialed in. However, it's tri-way, which means if it's going to be a user and it's a working finish, those are the ones that I tend to make my actual users for Hinderers, is those, and I'll swap out the bearings for the washers. And as a result, though, you end up with a very much, again, the detent doesn't change. It's very much for the bearings, but as soon, I'm a thumb stud guy anyway, and so for me, I'll try it with my backside. Not the best here. I'll try maybe a little more force. Yeah, so I can actually do the backside, but for me, it's basically straight up thumb stud. The detent becomes perfectly tuned for those thumb studs. So, yep, swap out, put your washers. It's thumb stud ready. This one, no thumb studs. So for me, I wouldn't even consider putting this one on phosphor bronze, because you're going to have to give it a lot of wrist. You're just going to have to. Either that or maybe loosened up enough so that you have any blade play. But if you're going to really get a Hinderer to where it has no blade play, it's going to basically at that point be tuned for thumb stud deployment. So that's kind of a big one to me. And then of course the last thing is the availability. I heard that these were going to start coming out and being available this summer. I checked the Hinderer website. I've checked other dealers. This just didn't make its way. So, the usual shortage of materials, etc. But I'm kind of a little bit bummed. It's probably not going to be the biggest money maker. And maybe that's why the XM18s are just being churned out and that sort of thing. That's fine. It's a business's purview. So overall, what I would say is if you love Hinderers, you're gonna like this one. If you love the flipper side of Hinderers, you're gonna love this one. I'm just a little bit disappointed about the fact that there are no thumb studs. There is future capability for it. Obviously, there's going to have to punch those holes in there. It will be a tight fit getting around this little peninsula here. I did kind of just measure on my own where thumb studs might be and where they would have to go to not hit. That will be kind of a tough one, because it's going to have to be a little bit out here, which puts it more in line of the cutting path. So it'd be like right there, and that's going to be in the line of the cutting path. To actually kind of tuck it back, they would have really had to make this peninsula more rounded like that. So just imagine you snip that thing off. And I think that would have, in all honesty, been the better design. So here I am designing knives, right, for Rick Hinderer, who's been doing this for whatever, 20 years. I don't know. That's what I can say, is if you like Hinderer designs, and you love a flipper, you're going to love this one. If you're relying on thumb studs and like the tri-way and like to go to the washers, I think this is a pass. And if I were going to make this a heavy user or an oft user, I'll use it from time to time, but if I was going to make it an oft user, this one is almost a no-go for me with the no thumb studs there. So hope this was of use, and if it was, like and subscribe, and like I said, tune in for the disassembly that I'll go ahead and link on after this. Take care. Okay, this evening we are going to disassemble this Hinderer Project X using the tool that's in the back. So again, as part of the Hinderer modular backspacing system, one of the options is this handy dandy tool, and this is one of the, I won't say it's a new thing, because this did exist in the full track, but in terms of, I believe, the hardware being not the specific 5/64, etc., and these having like backing nuts here, I think that's kind of new stuff. Like I said, I haven't ever held a full track, and I don't know if it was exactly like this, but we're going to go ahead and take this sucker apart and see how it does. I would normally swap out the, if it was for my users, my bigger ones, Hinderer knives, I will swap out normally the, actually, let me go ahead and take off the, Yeah, so that works handy. So we're back to, I don't know what size these are. Before I do the full review, maybe I'll go ahead and measure what they would be, but you're going to get it if you get this Project X knife anyway. So I just want to check them out. Yeah, works well. All right. I shouldn't need anything else, but maybe a little bit of KPL. Maybe I'll get some alcohol and clean out if the bearings are nasty. But normally on Hinderer users, I will actually swap out the bearings for the washers with the tri-way. This has the tri-way system. So those are the only ones that use the super small. And if you take a look at this, oops. So then you have a little bit bigger hex there. And we're going to go ahead and we'll start with this middle one here. So it looks like it's a standard. So it's not a Chicago screw because it's definitely going through the backside there. Yeah, those are 2 independent screws. Alrighty. But I will say this is kind of a handy little thing to have the tool with it for disassembly in case you need to do any quote-unquote field maintenance. I don't know who's going to be doing field maintenance necessarily on a $500 knife out in the field, but if you had to, it's good to know it's there. Actually, we'll go ahead and take the backside one off. Nice big back screw there. Holy crap, that is a huge back screw. Look at that thing. Put that on the back side, and we'll go ahead and take the front side before our pivot off. Definitely some Loctite in there, and that's a good thing. What I do like about this is that you don't have to use the spanner wrench. It has those nice captive nuts there to receive that, and that I think is actually a definite improvement over having to use that little spanner. Well, everybody ends up using a penny, or in my case I use a Korean won for smaller ones. Pivot. Alright, we'll go ahead and disassemble this thing now. It should come apart at this point. And sure enough, there we go. So very interesting. Got these big old barrel spacers back here. We got kind of a standard-ish looking barrel spacer there. There's no captive D in it. Doesn't seem to be a problem on assembly. So yeah, that is your... There's going to be your stop pin right there. That's one thing to note of interest here is that it kind of takes a lot of DNA, and I'll talk about this when I do the review. It takes a lot of DNA from many different models, and the one that I can think of that uses the internal stop pins is the half track, but it actually has a solid pin. Either it's press fitted or maybe part of the steel, I'm not sure, probably press fitted, that's attached to the blade, and then it has the internal channels that it goes on. This one actually has the stop pin there and then a cutout in the blade to catch on that. So if you kind of take a look, it's going to basically go on the pivot. There's your open position, and then it's going to go to the closed position. Don't hit myself. And that's where it's going to catch on your stop pin there. So that's seemingly new. Like I said, I've never handled a full track. I would be interested in knowing if that is something that folks have experienced. Actually, there is a little bit of gunk in there, so I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. Just get a little bit of alcohol. You can get 100% or, well, 91% isopropyl these days. Again, it was gone for a while. You do have to seek it out. Because they're not readily available at the stores, but they are available. Whoa. Flying nut. Ugh. Flying pivot nut. Yeah, this was actually dry. I did not have any lube in there, so that might help it a little bit. Clean off that junk from the detent ball. I've always found it interesting how most of the Hinderers I've taken apart will have one of the closed side facing the blade, but then the other one always seems to be on the flip side, has the open captive part of the bearings. So I'm not sure if there's a particular reason or if they just do it with whichever one fits a little bit better. I'm not sure on that. So we got a fair bit of gunk on there. We're essentially ready to slap this guy back together. I will go ahead and, yeah, let's go ahead and, I think I got that right. No, that's the wrong side. Okay. We're going to go ahead. So you're going to have your captive nuts on the lock side. So we'll go ahead and get that in, starting with the pivot. Dang. Those are some tolerances. Tight. A few little drops there. Interesting. I'll go ahead and give one little drop on the detent ball. Put one little one in there. Give a little assistance there on that path. Alright, we'll go ahead and bring over this back. Smidge in there. Slip that guy back on. A little bit of that off. A couple drops of KPL. Slap this guy back on. I don't know if it matters the order. Normally I would actually put in the pivot screw. Excuse me. In this case, I want to kind of have a fulcrum point for reassembly. And I also know it's going to be a little bit of a challenge with that Loctite on there. It's starting to grab. But I'll say this much. This is one of the easiest easiest knife to take apart and put it back together I've ever done. Truly, I would say that. You know, is that worth the additional $50 to get the tool that comes with it and the convenience of that? It surely may be, depending on how you value your time. It's kind of snug, and we'll go ahead and get this last one started here. But boy, I gotta tell you, that part of this knife, let's see if it goes together squarely and centered and all that stuff. I've never had a Hinderer knife, and I've pretty much taken apart every single one for various purposes, whether it be cleaning, customization, replacement of hardware, etc., etc. I've never had one not go back exactly where it was. So in terms of, and that was including swapping tri-way, going to washers. I've only had one that was not centered, and it went right back to the position of exactly where it was. And it was just literally 0.5 millimeter off. All right, start to snug some of these. To the back. All right. Loosen that the slightest bit. Go ahead and actually I'm going to go ahead and tighten these. Let me get these middle guys tight, because basically they should be an equal pull snugness. Do the back, and then we'll do the pivot. No blade play. It's a little bit to the show side. Bring it back to centered. No blade play anywhere. Perfect. Well, I gotta tell you, I give the disassembly and then the in-place tool on the back. That gets a straight A right there. Very, very good. I'm not sure if this is steel or if this is titanium. I'm sure it's going to be steel. Oh yeah, that's steel. But one good thing I will point out is, so this is one of the battle bronze finishes, which essentially is their, you know, they're washed, if you will, after it's been bronze anodized. But it always goes with the working finish blades. And a nice thing they did is they actually, you know, I'll talk about this more in the full review too, is they went ahead and made this one into a working finish too. So we'll put that back in there. Nice. Oops, I gotta do the pocket clip. So excited, but I don't need to do the pocket clip. I can do that. I'll proceed on to the review, and we'll see you on the other side. Good evening, YouTubers. For tonight's episode of Bourbon and Blades, we have a fine larceny. Ah, screw that. I'm just kidding. That'll be on the outtakes if you get that far.